Good morning and welcome everyone. We're really delighted to see so many of you. Welcome to the annual AI Labs event. And today we'll focus on idea to impact. My name is Ebba Josefsson Lindqvist and I will guide you through the program today. It's a pretty full program that we have, especially here on stage, but we also have the opportunity for you to network a lot and mingle. So in the lunchtime, you will have a lot of time of networking and mingle with both partners that are exhibiting here in the hallway, as well as the speakers who will be at the back of this room. And after the lunch mingle, we also have some workshop sessions. So if some of you haven't signed up for workshops and are still interested, you can still join the workshops. Before we get started, I have a little bit of information that I want to share that is important. So if we would have an emergency, you do have 4 different exits. 1 to this side here at the front and to this side, and 2 at the back of the room, at the window wall at the end of the room here. There's a meeting point out on the large parking lot outside of the main entrance of this building. And worst come to worst, we need a heart starter. There is one in the reception of the Lindholmen Science Park reception, just outside here of the entrance. You might already have found the brochure that is on your chair. Please have a read in it. Also bring it back to your offices or maybe home and share with colleagues. We hope you can find some really good inspiration from the work that has been done within AI Labs over the years, and especially some inspiration to what can be done. We are also filming the event today, so the video recording as well as the slides will be available shortly after the event. We'll also have some photographers that you might have seen. If anybody does not want to be photographed, please let us know, and we'll try to accommodate that. There is, as I mentioned, a full program here on stage before we have lunch, and there is actually no break planned. But if you would need to leave, please walk out quietly and use either the front door here or the one furthest back. Those are open all during the session. The 3 ones here in the middle are locked because our exhibitors are having their booths just right outside. So please use one of the open ones. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask any of the AI Sweden colleagues. Some of them even have an Ask Me poster on, or a little tag. But with that, I would really like to say again, a warm welcome, and ask one of my colleagues to come up and set the stage for today. Mats Nordlund, Director of AI Labs. Please give him a warm applause.
Thanks. Thank you, Ebba. Well, distinguished guests, colleagues, friends, partners, it's great to see you here. I'm very excited that we are able to do this event in this larger setting this year. We've done it a couple of years in the past, and at that time we were over in the Ericsson building. But given all the things we've done and all the partners we now have, we've grown out of that space. So with a quick look at the agenda for today, we've designed it very much to show how we accelerate the future of AI. So if we go to this one slide here, this is the design we've done. We start with a number of keynotes. That sets the big picture and the context that we operate in. After that, we move on to a couple of colleagues who really have taken us all the way from idea to impact, which is really what it takes to do innovation. Innovation hasn't really been completed until the idea is being used somewhere. So you will see how a couple of examples of that is done, and we will also have Svea talking about our talent programs, which is a secret sauce to actually making sure that it gets out into all the partners and into academia. Then we will look at some of the ideas that are in our pipeline that we are working on, that later on will go all the way to impact. That's where you can get involved on the early stages of the development of the technology, learn, get prepared, collaborate, and see what you might be able to do with this technology. Over lunch, as Ebba said, we'll have the mingle, and that is the time to learn more in depth from our partners and from our colleagues what they're doing, that's when you ask questions. We don't take questions in here because it takes too much time. So it's better you ask the questions out in the lunch time. And then the workshops Ebba mentioned is for us to listen to you. What things do you think we should look at next? So that is what the workshops are about. So accelerating AI in Sweden, why? I took these two slides to show why I think that is important. First of all, Sweden is consistently ranked in the top 5 on the innovation rankings in the world. Sometimes number 1, sometimes 2, 3, and so forth. And to remain at that position, we need to accelerate. All other countries are trying to catch up, and they are accelerating. So if we don't accelerate, there will be other countries that want to replace us and will replace us. So that's one of the compelling reasons to do it, is to maintain our innovation climate. The other part, and that is sort of how we can do it, is we have a fantastic ecosystem in Sweden. There is no other country, except huge countries like the US on the whole continental scale, that has the same number of different industry sectors in the one place. If you go to a single state in the US or in Europe, you will not find all the different types of industries we have here. And that is also how we try to accelerate innovation, by combining knowledge from these different sectors, bringing it across and helping each other out. What does it take? In my experience of my career, these are the 4 things that I've seen are critical to win an innovation race. That is speed and boldness. So move very quickly, get going on things, and don't just try to improve a little bit, but try new approaches. We must do that to complement sort of the more traditional approaches to innovation. So these are the 2 mindsets, speed and boldness, and then you need access to talent, and that's why I think it's so great to be in Sweden, where we have a lot of talent, and also the talent programs Svea will talk about, where we bring in new talent. And then timing, get going at the right time. So if you have these 4 things, we can win in any innovation race. And then next question is how. So I here trying to be slightly scientific, showing some curves. We know how to read curves. Without going into details here, what you see is a study that was first done in 1977 and later on in 2007. It showed exactly the same thing, and it shows how often engineers talk to each other, depending on how far apart they sit. So what you can see from this curve, which was done by the professor Tom Allen there, if you sit more than 6 meters apart, communication goes down and your innovation power goes down. So we need to have a place where we can bring our innovators, our talent together on a very short notice, so that they can start thinking through the problems, the challenges we have, and combine the experience. There's a recent article in Nature which I'm referencing at the bottom there, which shows that co-located teams do much more scientific breakthroughs than if you have a dispersed team. So the data is there. So it's just a matter of, do we have that place to get together? And that is exactly what AI Sweden is trying to do, and also some of the other programs here at Lindholmen is about collaboration, bringing people together. And our credo here is invest together and share with many. And what it shows is that the partners can find each other, identify that they have the same problem. We can come to AI Sweden, sit together, solve them, and then take home the learnings and the experience that we've developed together. And that is what I'm hoping to happen here over lunch, that you can talk to each other, talk to our partners, ask, can we try this, can we do something, and we can build things. And you will see how that has been done in the past, how we built things with contributions from partners, hardware, people, ideas, and that way solved a lot of different problems. Today we have about 160 partners, so there is a lot of different opportunities for you to talk to each other out here and see what kind of problems are important to you, what do you have as problems, get some inspirations from the speakers, maybe follow up on that and combine and design some new programs. And the question then is where? Well, obviously being an AI Sweden person, I think that AI Sweden is a good place for this. This here spiral shows what I think is the new triple helix. In the traditional way, when we talk about innovation at the national level, we talk about triple helix models where you have government, you have industry, and you have academia, and they complement each other. What I'm trying to illustrate here is that this is constantly moving. None of them are static. Industry is moving, public sector is moving, and we need a platform for experimentation and knowledge exchange that's also constantly moving at the same speed. And if we can do that, then we center humans in the middle, and it's about building capacity in these humans. So you take people from industry, from academia, from public sector, and we work together to build their talent, build their capacity. And when they can innovate and learn how to do it, they go back. And that is how we not only focus on doing a innovation in a thing, but also building capacity that you can use back in your companies or back in your organizations to work in a similar way. So who? Well, these are the people here at AI Sweden who has been doing this together with many of you at different areas. Some of them you will see today. We don't have time to show everybody, but this is the team at AI Sweden, and in addition to that, many of you guys come and sit with us here in Göteborg, in Stockholm, in some of our other locations as well. So the idea of today is get inspired by the speakers, meet the colleagues, see what the projects are about. And there are more projects than you will see today, and you can find some of them referenced, or most of them referenced, if you go to the back page of the brochure. There is a QR code that takes you to our project page. And you can also meet many of our engaged partners here and talk to them about opportunities to do experimentation and explore what can be done. So that sets the stage of the design of the program today. And with that, I'm going to pass the word back to Ebba to launch the program and invite our keynotes on stage.
So much, Mats, and
Thanks.
I'll ask you to bring the clicker over to our next
Yes.
speaker.
Thanks.
And thank you much for setting the stage and giving us some context for the rest of the program. Now we'll have our first keynote speaker, Martin Svensson, who is Managing Director of AI Sweden, who will share a few words about the work on building an ambitious AI ecosystem through bold leadership, collaboration, and collective investments. And you'll have to click to your own slide now.
That's fine.
There you are. Okay.
Thanks, Ebba.
Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Martin. I've had a pleasure to lead AI Sweden since we inaugurated in 2019. At that time, it was me, Mats, and two more colleagues trying to figure out what we were to do. And I think Mats touched on a few really important aspects. I will take it up one notch and talk about what we essentially do on a broader scale, which is building an ecosystem. And I think this has become even more relevant to think like that, not necessarily for each of you in your roles or your organizations, but very much for us. And I'd like to share how we think about this. So if we go back to 2019, I actually tried to find an image from this photo from this room because we had some of our early events here. So it's really great to be back. But this is from the other building from February 2019, when our then Minister of Digitalization started to sign our wall there. But you see what we thought about already then. Igniting the Swedish AI ecosystem. And I think we have been building it ever since. And AI Labs is really one of our key components of exactly that. I'll get back to that. And what is also what also makes me very proud, and I think also gives us collectively a very, very good foundation also going forward, is that when we get together with brilliant minds and say, these are the things we want to work on, because we believe these will be important for the future. We set those already 2020. I think there is now good timing to come back to these questions. What are the topics we should actually embark on collectively in AI Sweden? And you see a few things here that you will also hear about this afternoon that we have taken further. Obviously, we have adapted a little bit along the way, but already then I think we had a very good direction on where we wanted to go. And when you nail that and you apply a mindset and a way of working, things actually happen. So today is very much about showing you how we can do this. And try to keep in mind during the day that this is a little bit more than 6 years. We started with somewhat 2 + 2 people, 2 full-time, 2 half-time. And what we can achieve if we get together and do things in a couple of years is quite astonishing. So let's really think about today as also the foundation for going forward, not only looking at it what we have right now. But why are we doing this? I think this is also something obviously that has happened during the years, the understanding of what AI actually means for the world. I really like this graph from ARK Invest, a US investment firm, showcasing how general purpose technologies have contributed to growth over the years. And if we zoom in a bit, obviously AI is in the center of what now must be said to be an historical strong wave of innovation that will drive growth. And what I think is important there is not only to feel, we are right in the middle of this, right? Because we are, all of us, discussing AI. It's also the fact that we need to be, or we want to be on the right side of that wave. We want to be going with that wave, not having it going past us. And it's quite important because, as Mats said, the world is not standing still. So we need to figure out how we actually, in the best way, can utilize this and build a better society and build better businesses. So I think it's a great time, and it's really humbling to be part of this wave and the biggest part of it. So let's really keep that in mind. Coming back to ecosystem, I wanted to take ground this in the Swedish government's AI Commission that I was part of last year, because I think what is essential here is to understand that all those recommendations that were made in that report, for those of you who have seen it, is that it's very much about an ecosystem. It's about 75 recommendations, investments across many things. And that talks to the need of actually having this ecosystem. It's not about one thing. It's not about 5 things. It's really broad. And getting these kind of insights now from a broader number of people, when we have worked on this for so many years, is obviously inspiring. So considering this as what both companies and Sweden needs. And as Sweden really wants to be some important components in that broader ecosystem. Not everything, but some. And you will hear things on safety, for instance, today. I will just talk about leadership shortly. But this is how to think about that thick report that the Commission issued. We are not the only ecosystem in the world, as said. There are already, so to say, in some big organizations in Sweden, also continuously decision to be made. Should we put this investment in Sweden or in UK or in the US? There are many ecosystems that are being built at the same time. Some are ahead of us, some are emerging. But it's important to keep this in mind. We want to have a very, very ambitious and strong ecosystem in Sweden. And that ecosystem is really about the total set of components that ecosystem consists of. People are definitely one of those components. So this is our very rough view. We're going to work more on this during the year. It's a key part of our strategy going forward. But this is our view of what the ecosystem needs. Quite a lot of things. One thing that is really, really top of mind for myself in the discussion I have with leaders both in private and public sectors, there are 2 things. Leadership. This is really now being talked about. And the other one is how to work with regulation. How do we actually, what do we dare to do? How can we harmonize our understanding of the existing legislation? There are also some willingness to influence the future legislation, but the primary focus is how do we actually understand the current, and there are more things coming. These are things that we as an ecosystem should figure out together. We would be much stronger if we had fewer interpretation of the rules and so on that we need to comply with, instead of the thousands of organizations doing their own interpretation. So whether you are a country or a company, this is our illustration of what a company is or an organization, you need this ecosystem. So we need to build it. And some components are green because they have matured over the years. Some others need more work. We need stronger initiatives on competence, reskilling, upskilling, future workforce in Sweden, etc. There are many, many things here that we need to work on. Data and data sharing. I stood on this stage very naively 5 years ago and said, we're going to share hundreds of data sets. How many do we have? Handful, maybe? Very difficult. But now even the European Union is pushing for that, right? So how do we figure this out? Today, I think you will feel that it's a lot about access to technology, access to solutions that you will hear about through the day. But don't remember that everything you will hear about has come from collaboration with many. Another perspective of this is very, very important, I think. This is a iterative process of building knowledge, taking that knowledge into insights that we need to invest to generate some value. And typically, when that happens in a positive way, sometimes also when you don't get the value you want, you understand, we need to invest even more. And through the years, we have so many examples of partners that have gone through the first iterations and I said, okay, this is actually determining our future. Let's go back to the board and ask for a big investment where we can actually push it out throughout the organization. When that happens, we have examples of the ones understanding this the best, also investing the most. And this iterative process is important not only for companies, but for sectors, for industries, for public organizations, for our welfare. So we better get this going. And for those of you who have seen the latest report, the Nordic State of AI from AMD Silo, I think it pinpoints this very, very clearly. The ones that are mostly positive about their AI developments are the ones having a strategy and having a framework for how to measure. And it's really, really clear that those who have that also start to invest. But it also shows that report that the investments are very small among the participating organizations in that survey. Countries also need to do that. That's why the AI Commission is important. We need to invest in this ecosystem. But it's investing in the prerequisites. The actual investment in value happens in organizations and companies. So keep this in mind, because whatever perspective we take here, right, if we don't do this, we will have a gap in relevance. Either we lose competitiveness, or we don't deliver good services or enough good services to our citizens, or we lacked our total competitiveness as a country. So a lot of things to keep in mind here. And to make this happen, it's important to discuss what leadership is actually required. And we have felt for some time that it is a slightly different leadership than we are used to in Sweden. And we tried to put words on this already last year when we issued what we called an AI strategy for Sweden. It's a very high-level mindset for how we think that we ought to act in Sweden. So we were bold enough to say it's bold leadership that is required. What do we mean with that? We don't know fully, but we think it's decisions, it's ways of delegating, it's ways of collaborating that are slightly different from what we're used to. We need to make better and bolder decisions to actually stay with that way that I showed you before. Last week I was at a big conference with leaders. Suddenly, actually, throughout the crowd, they talked about courageous leadership. I think this goes in this direction. So if we as Sweden could get this mindset, we stand a very, very good chance of not only building a better society, but also building a very competitive ecosystem. And leaders individually is the ecosystem, right? So we need to have leaders that actually will lead with boldness and with much more visions for the future. I think we really lack this in many cases, including for us as a country. What are our visions for the future? What society do we want to build? I think all of you, all of us who know the opportunities we have with AI and other technologies, right? We feel that the technology is not the problem. We have it at hand. What we don't really know how to use, we'll figure out. But how do we get this change going? I think there is something that comes back to this. How do we get slightly better, bolder leaders? How do we create common visions? If we can do that again, I think Sweden stands a very, very good chance. I want to share one thing that comes back to Mats' slide about investing together, share with many. That was our, let's say, main mindset over a couple of years. This is perhaps a little bit of an internal slide for the team, but I decided to share it because I really think it talks about what it is about we do on a more conceptual basis. So Sweden really wants to be that center where we invest together and share with many. And what we want to do is to generate knowledge, tools, technology, resources, whatever we need, right? Whatever we decide on collectively that needs to be done, and share that. Sounds simple, but it isn't actually that simple in practice. So what we need to really work on, and some of you are really involved in this already, we need to figure out ways where we generate knowledge that doesn't stay within one organization, that is relevant to many. We do that through big project portfolios. And if we can enhance that, I think we do one part of it very good. I think we've come a long way in how we do this. It's important here, which is also one of our key ways of working, is to say, let's engage the ones that are the best, wherever they are. You will hear from one of our main collaborators in the US just now. Dakota State University has contributed tremendously in our knowledge generation, and we hope we can continue with that. So finding the best and let them contribute to the knowledge generation is important. But it doesn't really mean anything if we can't actually take that knowledge or that infrastructure and put it in a format where you and many more can actually access this. Because the knowledge doesn't mean anything if it stays within our organization or within our vaults. And figuring out this process is something I'm really, really keen on doing. We talk a lot about it. We do it to some degree very well, but we need to be better. And the talents are really key into this process. How do we move that knowledge into the ecosystem? Well, one way of doing it is to actually recruit some talents that can be trained and take it out there. So to wrap up, this is really about the people, as Mats said. And I'm really proud for what you're going to hear during today. So let's think about it as what we have achieved so far and as a base for what we can do to get it going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Martin, for putting in context how important the collaboration and the partners are for us, and also mentioning the talent. And we'll have another example of that with our next keynote speaker that you heard has come from quite far to join us here today. We're very happy for that. Josie Marie Griffiths is the president of Dakota State University in Madison, South Dakota, and has been collaborating with us for quite some time now, and especially with the focus on talent and how to spur AI and security. So we're looking forward to hearing more about building, accelerating cyber innovations through public-private partnerships.
Okay.
Please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, AI Sweden, for inviting me back. I've been several times now, and it's always a great time, and lots of ideas are being shared. I come from Dakota State University. Some of you may know us because of our relationship with AI Sweden, but those of you who don't know Dakota State, it's in the middle of the United States. It gets very cold in the winter. Sound familiar? It's very rural. And this university is a special purpose STEM university, a science, technology, engineering, and math university. And our big focus is in all things to do with computing, cybersecurity, AI, quantum computing, etc. So we deal with emerging computer-related technologies. That's our claim to fame. That's not all we do. We have a College of Education, a College of Arts and Sciences that are doing some very interesting things. But everybody at our university learns about the technology of the day and the technologies that are emerging to be applied in whatever discipline they happen to be studying. And I wanted to talk about public-private partnerships because I also do believe very, very strongly that collaborations are important. And if, in fact, we want to innovate and to have our innovations used, as Martin just said, then we have to actually interact with the environment into which the innovations will ultimately be applied. So, traditionally, Martin, my slides are not as pretty as his, but excuse me, government, academia, and industry, traditionally, that's the sort of triangle of interaction that exists. It's in the United States, many people believe that post-World War II, it is this triangle of collaboration that has led to the kind of technological advancements that have been developed. It used to be that most of the money came from government and was sent to academia and then also to industry. And the internet would be a good example of this. The internet started off as the ARPANET, the Advanced Research Projects Agency. It then evolved to become NSFNet, the National Science Foundation Network, still funded predominantly by the government with academic involvement. And then eventually it was commoditized and passed over to industry to become the current internet. So it was sort of developed within the government, funded by the government, developed within the government and academic sector, and then branched out into industry. And that's been very, very typical of the way our research funding has flowed. But it's all changed since the early 2000s. And now we're seeing industry as the predominant funder of research and development for artificial intelligence. There's a little bit in the government, but not a lot. And then the industry working with government and working with academia. So the nature of the interactions have changed a bit. And as we looked at this kind of change, we were thinking about how do we change the way we conduct research in the university. So our university, typical research for an academic is individual professors have a research agenda that usually follows on from their PhDs that they wish to pursue. And they involve students and doctoral students and others in doing that. And their output is publication. And their publications are usually in publications for other people like themselves, let's be honest, is the way academia tends to work. So we decided we wanted to work directly with industry in a series of initiatives that would allow us to actually accelerate the kinds of research that we were doing. And at about the same time as you were founding AI Sweden, I started talking about this concept called the Madison Cyber Labs. 2017, I first mentioned it. And the idea was we would do some additional research that individual professors could continue to do what they did because they need to do that for tenure and other things. But we were going to create some strategic research initiatives directly with industry that would sit above what goes on faculty member to faculty member. And we called it the Madison Cyber Labs because we're based in Madison, South Dakota. And I joked it'll be called the Mad Labs. Now, never underestimate the nature and popularity of a good name. Mad Labs. Everybody loved it. The professors loved it, the students loved it, our governing board loved it. everybody was buzzing around about the mad labs. We didn't have anything yet. They called them mad labs. How are the mad labs going? Because you're doing mad science with mad people in the mad labs. Anyway, so the mad labs is our version of the edge learning labs that you have. It's very similar in nature. And it takes problems from outside the university, and we put together teams of people to work on solving the problem. Sometimes we have to figure out exactly what the problem is, and then try and solve it, produce a solution, and put it out into that industry. And that's exactly what happened. So when I was invited first to AI Sweden, I was invited to speak at a conference on the future of democracy in the age of artificial intelligence. And the reason I'd been invited is I had been a member of the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence. And Mats and I knew someone in common. And so the referral was made, and I came here for the first time. And then Mats said to me, you have to come and see the Edge Learning Lab. So I said, okay, I'm very interested. We went over to see the lab. I said, this is very similar to what we're doing at the Madison Cyber Labs, the Mad Labs. And because we had a similar philosophy, a similar way of working, a similar approach to research, a similar approach to collaboration, we then have been able to create some collaborations that have been successful. So I'll talk about a couple of them and then relate what we're doing here and what we're doing back in the United States. So in the industrial immersion experience is for our graduate students, master's and doctoral students, to spend a month in the summer in Gothenburg working with students from Swedish universities, solving or working on a problem that's been provided by industry. Somewhat maybe in the American industry, maybe in the Swedish industry. And then after 4 weeks, they moved to Madison, South Dakota, and they work for 4 weeks there. And the students have a sort of really interesting experience. I think they're working together, they're working on international teams, which is a little harder for American universities because we're in the middle of the country, we're so far from everyone else. But it gives them a great experience, and they have really enjoyed those collaborations. And we found after the first year of doing this, we had an external funder. It's Case New Holland, who makes big agricultural equipment, very fitting since we're in the heartland of America. And they decided to fund the US side of this for 5 years. So we have funding for this, and we're up to 15 students from Sweden and 9 from the United States this time, getting together and working on projects. So very, very interesting experience that's intriguing a lot of people, and I think will generate some more funding because the results have been quite astounding for our sponsor and presumably for your sponsors. Slightly different project. So those are funded by industry. Another project is Project Boundary Fence. This is one of the first projects we had for the Madison Cyber Labs, which, while the idea was 2017, we had to have a research building. It's not that building. I'll come to that building in a minute, but we have a research building that was opened in 2019, so the same time, literally, as you were opening AI Sweden. Project Boundary Fence is a project with the state's Attorney General's office for Dakota State University to provide cybersecurity services to cities and counties in the state. They're all very, very vulnerable. They don't have enough personnel to have their own cybersecurity people. And so we provide vulnerability assessments, training, and we send them to service mitigation services to continue to do their work. It's been very successful. We're on our 3rd round of contracts with the Attorney General's office, and the work that we do has grown and expanded. And because of that work, we were then given work by the central government's Small Business Administration to do the same thing for small businesses across the state. And a small business is any company that has 500 or fewer workers, so they're not exactly small. And then we just got funding from Google to expand this program. So now we have three sponsors to do what we started doing for our state, and that's grown because of the collaboration. We have programs of centers of excellence with the National Security Agency. And last week in Stockholm, a gentleman from AWS said, I like the idea of centers of engagement, and so do I, so I'm giving it to you. We should not go now within the university for centers of academic excellence, but centers of engagement. Proposed legislation in the United States, we're all talking about how do we accelerate progress and how do we scale. scaling up is a big issue for us now. And this is a piece of legislation that's been proposed. It's called the American Science Acceleration Project, ASAP, which means as soon as possible, right? And the idea is, can we accelerate the outputs and the outcomes of American science by 10 years, by 2030, which is in 5 years. So I don't know how they're proposing this given the current situation, but I assume funding will come forward, and then there'll be more collaborations put in place. I do want to say one thing about co-location, though. Co-location works fine, and the government funding for a lot of research is concentrated into hubs, hubs and spokes, but hubs. And where we are in the middle of the country, it's very hard to get a critical mass. Even with a small university. So we've tried several times to put together a coalition of multiple states with several research universities. And the federal government has opted not to fund us for hubs. The AI hubs around the United States are all urban hubs. And we're trying to make the case, experiment with a single distributed rural hub, a series of rural entities, because otherwise we're just left out of the whole picture. So this is going to be interesting to watch. You might want to sort of look out to see how the government ultimately proposes that we create this massive acceleration of research output, particularly in AI. In 2016, when I went to Dakota State, we had one research collaboration. It was with the National Security Agency, and now you can see how many we have. So many of our students are engaged in project teams for short periods of time, and they move from project team to project team and get lots of experience doing that. So we have partners that are working on national security and defense issues. We have partners that are in the agricultural and food production environment, because that's our biggest industry in the state. We're doing a lot of work there in cybersecurity and AI. And we're working heavily in the healthcare sector as well, with cybersecurity and AI. And all of this has happened because we were able to bring funding from the public sector and the private sector together to launch these initiatives. I do think talent is the big key. When I was on the National Security Commission on AI, talent was huge. We broke up into different groups. I was chairing the talent group, and eventually every other group came back and said, now we need the talent. So there is a national talent strategy for cybersecurity. There's a national talent strategy for artificial intelligence. There's one for quantum. They all look very similar. And they talk about the fact that it's not enough to assume that our existing structures of education will be sufficient. So I talk about the fact that talent can be found everywhere. We can't do everything with domestic talent. We don't have enough domestic talent. We've got to do things working internationally. We also cannot wait for people to come into higher education. So we have programs reaching down into the grade school. So we have children as young as 6 and 7 who come to us for after-school activities or summer camps and so on. And then we have a program where students in their last 2 years of high school can get a full year of college credit at a subsidized rate, subsidized by the state, to accelerate people through this pipeline. And then we spun off a not-for-profit company to do workforce education and training in different formats. So we don't then have to go to our Board of Regents for permission to create a curriculum. We can just create a curriculum and put it out there and work with business and industry and government so that we can deliver workshops, we can deliver 1-week courses, 8-week courses, whatever they need, delivered in a hybrid fashion, some on campus, some online. What does this all mean? I also wanted to talk about, Martin talked about packaging. What was very important to us as a university that is in the middle of the country that nobody had ever really heard about was how do we create some visibility for us? So marketing, promotion, marketing communication became an important criterion for us. And we worked very, very hard to increase our exposure. And the first time I testified in Congress, I introduced myself as being from a small university on the prairie, a little university on the prairie. If you may know the television show, Little House on the Prairie. Well, that little house is about 30 miles from our university. And everybody just looked at me and said, here I are in Congress, am I being serious? And I was serious. But now we call ourselves a cyber powerhouse on the plains. And I've started to be introduced by people in Washington, D.C. as the president of the powerhouse on the plains, we created the term, we put it out there, but it's picked up by everybody else. So think about how you promote what it is you produce, because that is an important factor as well. And universities are not usually very good at that. Research institutions are more focused on the research. It's the corporations that tend to do this very well, but you might want to do this. But this is our senator. In recent hearings, he was talking about he was talking to the nominee for the Secretary of the Army, and he said, Dakota State University is a nationally recognized leader. Well, it's fine if I say it, but it's so much better if my senator in Congress says that for me. It's on the record. He said that recently, and he's been very helpful to us. The second person who's done this is our former governor, Christine Ohm. She has said she will leverage public-private partnerships. She was with me when we were asking for funding from a very wealthy person in the state. So he put up $60 million. She put up $30 million, and then she committed to help us find the extra 10. We had $100 million gathered for phase 2 of our Mad Labs, etc. And she said, I have helped make Dakota State University a global leader. So once again, here we have another person in Washington. This was during her confirmation hearing. It's on the record in Congress. And somebody said, every time you give a talk, you should use those 2 quotes, which is what I'm doing. So you can hear them too. It's very, very nice when other people start recognizing what you're doing. But in order to do it, you have to sort of have a focus. So we created our focus areas for research: national security and defense, cyber agriculture, cyber health, and then trying to promote industries within our state and region so that we could sort of give back to the states that fund us with public monies. That's a very powerful argument to make. And then when we went in to want to expand these capabilities now into quantum computing, which is very hard to explain to people, except to say it's important and we need to start work now. It took me 2 years to do that, and then finally our legislators decided that they would fund quantum computing at Dakota State University. So now we're doing that. And it's just because the private funds have come. If we didn't have the private funding, I don't think the public funding would have come at the level at which it came. But now it's both working together, and now we've established that routine, we can go back for other initiatives and broaden out what we do. And everybody is excited because we have this relationship with Sweden. Interestingly enough, I think, yeah, she hasn't done 1 minute yet. We also have a similar relationship we're building in Australia with a couple of universities that are very strong in cybersecurity and quantum computing. And when I first went there, I said, well, we're doing so much in cybersecurity. I think we should focus our efforts on what we call the 5I countries. This is the intelligence sharing that emerged after World War II. So it's the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. So you can understand why. And then everybody says for a while, well, why Sweden? And you became a NATO member. And the rationale is that you're a NATO member and we're NATO. And you have a preferred partnership program through the National Guard program in the United States. And your preferred partner is the state of New York. However, the state of New York does not have, or the National Guard in New York does not have strong expertise in cyber. And by that, I don't mean just cybersecurity, I mean cyber, AI, and all emerging technologies. And so we now have a memorandum of understanding with the New York National Guard that the South Dakota National Guard will work on projects with Sweden through the Preferred Partnership Program in areas of cyber, fighter aircraft, and something else. We have other capabilities in our state. But anyway, we have other opportunities to work together internationally. So a lot going on. I'm happy to answer questions at the end of the morning, during lunchtime, etc. I'd be happy to tell you some of the other things we're doing. But these public-private partnerships have really allowed us to accelerate the impact of the research that we've been doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Well, really a big thank you to Josie Mary Griffiths for sharing your perspective on the importance of these public-private partnerships, but the collaboration in general and what it can actually lead to. And now we do have a greeting from the Director General of Vinnova, the Swedish Innovation Agency, Darja Isaksson.
Hi, I'm Daria. I'm really happy to be able to say hi as Director General of Vinnova and as a proud supporter of this dynamic and courageous initiative, AI Sweden. A few years ago, AI Sweden brought many of us together around an idea to build infrastructure for edge learning that could position Sweden as an international leader, not just in words, but in action. And now we're here. The infrastructure is in place, results are being showcased, companies have invested, not through procurement, but by contributing, sharing, believing in the vision, engaging. That's something worth celebrating. But more importantly, there's something even greater to take with us moving forward. That this is what happens when bold people move fast, when we dare to act before everything is perfectly planned, when we allow talent, students, researchers, and industry to meet in real hands on work. At Vinnova, we're proud to have contributed. We're even more proud of what you have all achieved. You got things moving. You used labs instead of long processes. You built trust, and that trust enabled more people to step forward and engage. Many of the outcomes are being presented today. And to me, this is bold leadership that provide concrete examples of how we can accelerate the use of AI in Sweden, not 5 years from now, but today. There are many people to thank here. I especially want to mention Jose Marie Griffiths and Dakota State University, who have helped strengthen the connection between AI and cybersecurity in Sweden with student projects, real data, and international partnerships. These are exactly the kinds of alliances that build global leadership. So, what are the takeaways going forward? Do more of what works. The labs, the consortia, the experiments, that's where the innovation happens. Reward movement and courage. Those who dare, those who move quickly, those who show something, give them recognition and support, and keep going. Not doing exactly the same thing, of course, but by building forward. Today, the need for decentralized AI, for security solutions, and for bold collaborations that challenge the status quo is greater than ever. So, above all, keep investing in people, because it's people who lead, and it's people that do the activity that makes all the difference. So, thank you all, and I hope you have a really, really good day today.
So with that, we're now moving into the second part of the stage program. So a big thank you to the keynote speakers for setting the context of what we're here to talk about today. We're now transitioning into hearing some examples that we have on the way of working and how we actually work with partners to get from idea to impact. And our first speaker to showcase this is my colleague Johan Östman, who is research scientist, and we'll talk about snowballing innovation, how our projects scale and evolve. Johan.
The the Taylor I.
Thank you.
Right, can you hear me? Great. Yes, so thank you, Ebba. I'm Johan Östman. I work at AI Sweden. I've been doing it for 3 years. And I'm going to talk a little bit about parts that overlap a bit what Martin was talking about regarding the history of AI Sweden, but I'm not going to go into much detail. And then I'm going to talk about how these donations and initiatives from early collaborators have helped us in actually snowballing everything we do. And I want to also to talk a little bit about where we're going. So let's get into it. So my talk is called Snowballing Innovation, how projects scale and evolve. And AI Sweden, as you all might know, is a collaborative effort that was initiated by the government with a huge investment back in 2018, 2019-ish. And here at Lindholmen, it all really started, as far as I am concerned, I wasn't there, but it all started somehow with Vinnova throwing money at AI Sweden to establish itself inside Lindholmen Science Park. And the purpose of AI Sweden, back then and now, is to accelerate the use of AI for the benefit of our society, our competitiveness, and for everyone living in Sweden. Okay, this sounds great, right? You got a bunch of money, you have a vision, now what? So how do you go from, let's see if I can make this work. How do you go from down here? We're standing down here, we are looking at all the great stuff that is being done, for example, across the Atlantic. How do we climb up here? starting somewhere around here. So we need to get the ball rolling. We need to somehow get things going. You need to bet on some horses. What horses to bet on? Martin already showed a slide that kind of pointed at them. And I want to make them explicit. I might not cover all of them, and for those of you that are part of those that I miss, I'm sorry. But as far as I can tell, looking back at AI Sweden, these are pivotal moments in time. So infrastructure is very important. At the time when AI Sweden was founded, it was very hard to get your hands on GPU resources. We had collaborators that contributed, they donated infrastructure for anybody to use that operated within AI Sweden. We focused on decentralized learning, federated learning, decentralized solutions, because this was hype at the moment. It was introduced by Google really in 2017 to be working with AI. And AI Sweden picked it up and tried to establish ourselves as some kind of pioneers within the field. We were among the first in Europe to work on large language models. We pre-trained GPT-3. We released it. It was done training before ChatGPT came out. We were the first in Europe to do this. We have also engaged with healthcare providers via the information-driven healthcare, which is also a pioneering initiative, really initiated from hospitals here at the West Coast. And of course, the talent programs that we have established at AI Sweden, they are pivotal for our success and for all the stuff that we are doing. So we got the ball rolling. We had a few horses that we betted on. And it turns out that these were pretty good bets. Most of these things became very important, especially, I would argue, this part, the usage of language models. Nobody could really predict the explosive effect large language models would have on our society. And once we got going, once we built the know-how in how to make these projects, how to build these kind of artifacts, of course, other people want to work with us. And in doing so, more projects emerge, more ideas emerge, more innovation happens. We get more snowballs running down there. So I want to go up. I try to prompt these images, but the balls are usually going down. So imagine these going down the direction. And I want to give you an example of how this type of innovation, how these other snowballs here emerge, like from actual use cases. I want to show you how this has been done starting from two particular examples. So I want to start from this information-driven healthcare thing that I talked about in the beginning, and also the fact that we have partners that have donated infrastructure to us. So this spurred a joint project between, among others, but mainly Region Halland and Sahlgrenska University Hospital, to try to do federated learning between two hospitals. Let's work together between the hospitals to build better models. This got the talent programs engaged. EMI jumped on to learn about it in a sandbox, to understand the regulative nature of it. But we also had effects in the horizontally, where, for example, European Space Agency looked at us and said, okay, yeah, I mean, you're doing this. We want to do this. Let's do it together. We looked at new infrastructure, trying to get away from the monopoly that NVIDIA essentially has. And once we understood these parts, new projects were born. And new projects were born. And this is the really cool part about this. So we build stuff, we understand new things, we see openings in other industries because we have so many partners engaging in AI Sweden. So we get a feel for many different industries. And it just adds on. We have an accumulative effect that is really cool. I haven't seen anything like it before in my career. And of course, all of this is innovation projects, but they also generate really cool research. So all of these projects are essentially generating research results as well that we are publishing in venues. We are at the forefront at the forefront of science in many of these fields, simply because we're collaborating with a lot of good people. So all of this innovation is possible because everybody of us come together, and because we define problems that are dear to all of us and we work on them together. These are just the 10 first projects that I could think about. I'm sure I can cook up 10, 15, 20 projects more if I try. So the mantra of AI Sweden is, let's invest together, share with many. Let's use all the brain power that we have in this country to build cool stuff, to build things that makes us competitive internationally. And we have started to do so. We have built projects, we are climbing this mountain, but we are not up yet. We are obviously not the international leaders. You see it in many rankings, and you can even feel it. So the question is, what do we need to do to get there? And this is what I am hoping to learn about today by talking to all of you, by engaging in the workshops. I want to understand what are the bottlenecks that we are facing today when it comes to applying data-driven methodologies, and can we formulate it somehow, problems around this that we can work on together to climb closer to the top. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Johan. Great to hear that. Now we'll hear another example of how these collaboration projects have worked. So next up is Jonathan Permet, who is AI transformation strategist and will tell us about from research to reality, the journey from GPT Swea to Svea. Please, Jonathan.
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Jonathan Permet. I work at AI Sweden as an AI transformation strategist, and right now I am project leader for this project that I'm going to tell you all about right now. I'm very much going to build on the same vein as Johan did and talk about how an innovative environment led from one project that is very much research-based to another project that is very much practical implementation-based. So I'm going to talk specifically about how the insights from GPT Swea project became the seed for the project that is called a shared digital assistant for the public sector. But let's start with GPT Swea. A lot of people know about this project. I'll just tell you the cliff notes here. This was an effort that was done by AI Sweden all the way back in the times before ChatGPT and generative AI really exploded the whole AI scene in the whole world and changed the world. So the innovative foresight is really worth acknowledging. Just like Johan was talking about, this was a bet, and it really played out because it turned out that large language models would be probably the most important driver for AI adoption in the world. This was a 40 billion parameter model. It was developed in a cooperation between AI Sweden and RISE and WASP and KB Labs, and was trained on the Berzelius supercomputer. And it was a very big focus on Swedish and Germanic languages, or Nordic languages. And the point was to build this thing so we can enable more general applications than earlier models. There was some important key insights that came from GPT Swea. Of course, there were many insights, and the project led to a more implementation phase as well, but there was some key insights that really led forward to another project. There was a lot of understanding that was created about training methodology for large language models. This is a very important thing. It's hard to train large language models, and it's hard to understand how data leads to training models, and this has its practical implementation often in fine-tuning of large language models. Also, there was a greater understanding of how domain adaptation sometimes is critical for specialized context. We need to retrain and fine-tune models. And we also need to bridge the gap between technical capability and organizational implementation. And anyone who has a title of digital strategist or something knows how important it is with this point. And it can never be pointed out enough that we can build all the cool stuff in the world, but we most of all need the capability of users to actually create value with the stuff we build. One of the great insights was that we really need collaborative approaches to AI development in Sweden, and maybe especially in the public sector in Sweden. And this is where I came in. So my journey started in 2023 at AI Sweden. I started working just about the time when GPT-3 project was wrapping up. I was working with something called the AI Council, where 12 representatives of municipalities in Sweden was strategizing for the whole public sector about AI transformation. We could see that there was a great need of a collective effort to do something for the public sector. There was a lot of small projects around, but nothing really came to fruition. And we could also see that the challenges of adopting open source software and other solutions in the public sector was way too big for any single actor. We need expertise, we need hardware, we need data to be able to do this, and we need to do it probably on a national scale. So I had many lunches with Ariel, one of the creators of GPT-3. We talked about training, we talked about scaling, we talked about fine-tuning, we talked about data annotation, and this really all came together like a soup in me to start understanding how can we do this on a national scale in Sweden. And then I had a little bit of a spark. I overheard a conversation about preference data, also known as the training method called reinforcement learning with human feedback. We had an idea at AI Sweden that we should be able to do this in Sweden if we have enough scale. I really ran with this idea, and I thought we should start collecting data and train for models in Sweden. So I went to my summer house and I wrote a white paper about this, and I started presenting it in my the ecosystem. So what is it? Well, we had this idea to collaborate around a few important points. To share data generation, to do a broad AI transformation effort, and to develop shared AI solutions for texts. And we built a prototype called Svea, which is a web-based chat interface that is model agnostic, so that we can fine-tune models and implement them into the software. And some of the key components for the Svea project is to, the project, a shared digital assistant for the public sector, is to share critical resources, collaborate around data generation, and to develop shared solutions. And this is very much inspired by the insights that came from the GPT-3 project. So this is what Svea looks like today. This is one of many efforts where we are meeting with all our stakeholders. We have about 50 organizations in this initiative right now, and we're talking about AI implementation. We're talking about how to create value from the use of chat-based large language models. And we have this big structure of data annotation. And this idea very much comes from the understanding of how to create data for training of large language models that was created in the GPT-3 project. We are going from domain experts and AI experts, creating ideas about business value, the annotation goals for this value, and then coming all the way down to individual annotators. We have about 300 annotators creating data, and we've created more than 10,000 data points, which we are very proud of. And they do this annotation task. I'm breezing through a few pictures here just so you get a little bit of an idea about what we're doing. So this is really a story about the power of connected innovation. We see how foundational research can sometimes lead to practical implementation and value creation without quite knowing that when we start the foundational research. It is very rarely a straight line from foundational research to practical implementation. And the innovative environment at AI Sweden was very much the bridge between research and real-world application. We need places like this that have a little bit of a soup of initiatives, just like Johan was talking about, where you don't quite know what's going to lead to the next thing. But if you just work with the right ideas, you have talented people and you work hard, you will for sure see that we go from insights from one project into ideas for the next one. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, for that, and also impressive to hear that more than 50 partners are collaborating on one project. That's a bit of management to do, of course. Thank you so much. And we've heard a few of our speakers mention talent, and this is really one of the secret recipes or the secret sauce that we see to a lot of the progress of the different projects that we run. And to talk more about it, we have Head of Talent Programs, Sofia Hedén. Please go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you, Ebba, for that. And as Ebba mentioned, several people have already mentioned the importance of talents here today. So I will keep expanding on that and also give you a few concrete examples of how we work with talents. So the talent programs are a vital part of our way of working, designed to accelerate innovation and embed individuals into organizations. And working closely with talents and also with you, our partners, allows us to drive innovation at the pace that AI demands. And talents provide the engine to rapidly test ideas and move into impact. And when we talk about competence at AI Sweden, we usually talk about training, learning, knowledge, or we talk about competence in the form of individuals, talents. And I think both are as important. We need to continuously upskill and reskill our staff for long-term needs. But getting impact now requires rapid action. So if we want to get started now, which I think everyone in here wants to, then people, talents, individuals are a very quick way of introducing knowledge into an organization. At AI Sweden, we attract motivated students and recent graduates. We equip them with the necessary skills and context to tackle real-world AI challenges, and then we do the matching between the talents and you, our partners, and the projects that you propose. And something that we see again and again is young people's capacity to achieve remarkable outcomes with guidance and resources. They deliver fresh perspectives, innovative solutions, and they have a high willingness to experiment if we just let them and if we trust in their capabilities. After over 20 talent programs since the start of AI Sweden, there are so many good examples of work that has been done by our talents. We work with talents with different competencies and perspectives, and we have programs with quite different setups. Since today focuses on the activities that we do in our AI labs, I want to share two examples from our more technical programs. In I4AI, our international talent Jorge, who holds a PhD in bioengineering and computer science, is working on a no-show prediction at Region Skåne, one of our partners from the public sector. He's working on an AI-driven solution to predict when patients are most likely to miss their scheduled appointments, reducing no-show rates and optimizing healthcare resources. Jorge is together with 3 other talents, part of what we call a rotation program, where they rotate between 2 or 3 different organizations and spending 1 day a week at AI Sweden. So you can imagine that it's quite the offer for a graduate to test 2 or 3 different workplaces during a year and a half or 2 years, and also becoming a part of AI Sweden and our whole ecosystem. And one of our programs that is returning for the 4th year this summer, also mentioned by Jose Marie Griffiths, is the Industrial Immersion Exchange Program that we run in collaboration with Dakota State University and Chalmers. And this here is the group from last summer, and we have now around 25 students ready to take on challenges for this summer. So students from Dakota State University and Swedish universities work on projects on AI and cybersecurity proposed by our partners. Last year, these students worked on projects like membership inference attacks on fine-tuned LLMs on AI Sweden's LeakPro project, real-time anomaly detection in marine environments at the Swedish Defense University and the Swedish Marine, and LLM-enhanced honeypots at VGR and Volvo Group. And I want to show you a video that's featuring the students and projects from last summer.
Our partnership with AI Sweden, we've been running a summer industrial immersion program for the last couple of summers.
We just really kind of put together a very small pilot program to begin with. I think we had only 6 students in the first iteration, 3 from DSU, I think maybe 4 from Sweden, something along those lines.
This summer we have 12 DSU students and 11 students from various Swedish universities. All of them kind of converge at AI Sweden in Gothenburg, and then we break them up into various teams. So this year we actually have 5 teams. So we have 5 different industry partners that essentially have provided some type of challenge.
So I was very excited when I got accepted to this program to get to do like a exchange, to see a new country, to learn how people work here in the US. So it's been really cool.
The travel experience is great. Everyone is really super excited about that. But then, like I say, the projects that they end up doing are really exciting and really a lot more than I ever expected that they could do.
Those types of projects were really trying to root in kind of that industrial immersion, kind of going to companies to get the kind of challenges and problems that they are interested in, and then throwing students into those things to create novel proofs of concepts or deliverables that work for that specific entity.
I've been really impressed with how professional and driven the students are. They really know what they're doing. They're producing deliverables, which is wonderful to see. I've seen a lot of interns, just other places where, you know, they kind of have some stuff to show for their internship, but not a lot. But these groups are very driven.
I've learned how to utilize a lot of the different models in a way that I can really work on like other projects. So I can take a lot of my work that I've done here and implement it in a variety of different ways.
So as you see, we like to equip our talents with a lot of AI Sweden merch. Can also be found in the paper or magazine that you found on your seats. So just to kind of round up, our programs take various different forms to cater different partner needs. There are more, of course, than the ones mentioned here today, but I think the main thing that I want to share with you and show you is that we are stronger, we're more attractive, and can create better offers when we do it together. So when several organizations collaborate around their competence needs, we can recruit the best talents. They get access to the expertise and resources at AI Sweden and work on real challenges and projects that our partners propose. And I also want to say thanks to the partners that are in our talent programs for your trust and willingness to do it together with us. We believe that talent is at the core of future success. That's why we're committed to fostering Sweden's next generation of AI and technology workers and leaders. So AI Sweden is here to support with speed, expertise, and boldness to reach ambitious goals. And I would love to talk more about your organization's competence needs and about our upcoming summer and graduate programs later during the Mingle. And if you haven't signed up for a workshop yet, please join me and Ebba to talk about talent attraction and talent development after lunch. Thank you.
Great, Sophia. Thank you so much for that and for highlighting the talents. And just to mention again, you're more than welcome to join our workshop. We would love to get the input from many of you to hear what you would need. And we're now transitioning into another part of the stage program. Now we're looking on the edge of tomorrow. And we'll see some examples of our research projects that are now being or pushing the edge of AI. And this is also where we see that the collaboration opportunities still lie and how these projects are being developed. And this is really where you can also now find ways to engage and make sure that we come up with these new ideas that we could see from, for example, Johan's presentation. New ideas bring new ideas, etc., and new projects. And to give this a bit of context, we have Helena Theander, who is head of operations of AI Labs. Please, Helena.
Thank you, Ebba. And nice to meet you all. So I'm here to bridge from the past to the future. And what we have done a lot in the past, as you have heard, is working with edge learning and federated learning techniques, building infrastructure test beds, boosting innovation, and making real impacts together with our partner in your companies and organizations. So we are now building on the way of working and the learnings that we have and moving into new directions, into AI security, and what we see in the future is, for instance, agentic AI. But first, I want to connect back to what Martin talked about this morning of the AI Commission. They made this roadmap or Färdplan with not less than 75 suggestions on important areas to work in. And I want to show you that we are not working in all of them, but we work in most of these areas and have done so for the last 6 years. So for instance, they suggest to work with regulatory sandbox for companies. We have worked with a lot of projects in this area, projects with IMI, as Johan mentioned, data right innovation, another project, and legal networks. So we are already on this very important issue. We have supported startups since 2020. We have been the national leader for both Swedish, Nordic, and now European large language models. We have worked with national implementation of AI in health and IMI regulatory sandbox, that's also Johan showed before. And another important suggestion that the AI Commission has made is to mapping energy consumption and plan for doubled energy needed. And for the 2 last years, we have been working on mapping and forecasting energy needs and production, a very important issue for the future. Another suggestion was compute for training and compute for usage. And since start, we have been working with this together with the suppliers, some of them which you will meet later on the mingle lunch, and build our infrastructure where you can train and evaluate models that we build, and also evaluate different kind of hardware and software and frameworks together. Another suggestion from the Commission was to manage good data handling from SCB and also working with data stewardship functions. And we have had good collaboration with SCB from start, and we have had projects working on Kubernetes with them and also discussing data steward function, both with them and also a lot of you sitting here today, because we think that is a very important function in companies and how to handle data and to work on that together. Another suggestion is to support research in AI and security on the Cyber Campus. Since last year, we are on this and we are building AI Security Consortium, which you will hear more about from Bobby real soon. Other priorities is making international AI platforms and tools available. This we've also done since start. For instance, maturity assessment with applied AI from Germany. We have worked with ESA in co-creating models called Passeus, which can be downloaded and used by all, because when we create something, we want to share it with all of you. We have collaboration on lifelong learning. We have engaged public sector to use AI and develop AI together since the very start of AI Sweden. And another suggestion is to really put in co-fund for Digital Europe and EU calls, and we really second that. We need co-funding for EU projects to really make these large language models, for instance, and other important projects for Sweden and for Europe. So our ambitions have been and continue to be that we should be world leading in strategic areas. It started with edge learning and natural language understanding, but we're moving into privacy preserving techniques, AI security. Coming up is agentic AI. And we really want to attract international talents. And the coming 4 speakers are coming from international backgrounds, so we really live to tell the story. We are 160 partners in AI Sweden that invest together and share with many, as we had said a lot of this day. We really keep this sharing mindset all the time and combining with the collaboration efforts that we do that make us lead with speed and boldness to solve key societal challenges and business challenges. And one great example of these challenges, both societal and business challenges, is, I think, the Edge Learning Consortium. Started with automotive industry. They wanted to circumvent sharing sensitive data and gain faster collective updates in car fleets. Rapidly moved into health that also have interest of not sharing data. Then to space that looking for latency improvements, and finance that also have sensitive data they don't want to share, but only the information. Later comes security and energy. Maybe one of you has a new domain that we want to work on. What is the next and coming area? Let us know. Because we have in the middle here the talents, and they are the one who are carrying the information between all of these domains. And it's only together that we have the critical mass in all areas. So I think that this is a perfect example on how to build critical mass and still share it with all different domains. So what we see in the future in the spotlight is regulation, agentic, infrastructure, security, European language models. And this is something that we will talk to you a lot about. And the forthcoming colleagues is also going to show examples in this. But I really encourage all of you to talk to us during the mingle and in the afternoon sessions about what do you have, what is your need, what is your dreams, what do you want to collaborate on? Is there anything else we should put here in the spotlight? Let us know and let us do great things together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Helena, for that. And we have a few more speakers to come. However, even if we're in the spring season, even here in Sweden, we did have one of our colleagues fall sick today. But he is showing his engagement by providing a video recording of his slides that he did this night. So I would like to introduce and thank Bobby, even if he can't hear us right now. Bobby Bridges, who is mathematician and innovation leader at AI Sweden, who was supposed to be here to present, but now you'll hear his beautiful voice talking about AI and security at AI Sweden for a secure AI ecosystem. So please enjoy Bobby.
Hello, this is Bobby. If you're hearing this, my head cold did not abate, and I'm still sick and not able to be there with everyone. But I'm happy to walk you through my slides, even if remotely. So first, let's talk about the AI Security Consortium. This is a 2-year push to advance our capabilities on everything in the intersection of AI and security, which is what I'll talk about the rest of the talk. It'll be led here out of the Gothenburg office, but like everything at AI Sweden, our aim is to serve the whole nation. We invite all partners to join the consortium. That does come with an extra fee, and we use that to move quickly on security-related issues of our partners. So for example, we're working to establish a postgraduate research program where recent master's and PhD graduates will work at AI Sweden for the consortium members. So this allows us to work on problems without the delay of having to write a proposal, wait for funding to get in place, hire staff, etc. It'll also build the workforce in Sweden for our partners. For those partners who don't wish to join, as always, you're welcome to join projects, learn, benefit from the activities. So we encourage you to be involved, and I've included Mats Nordland's email at the bottom. If you'd like more information about how to get involved, he's the right person to contact. So let's start with a definition of security. And here I mean security of anything, quite broadly. Cybersecurity, security of your home, security of your bikes as pictured. Security is about controlling access, ensuring availability, and preventing harm. So controlling access, only you should have key to your bike lock. Ensuring availability. If you can't get to where you locked your bike, then you can't access it. That would be a breach of security. And preventing harm. You should be able to ride your bike, for example, without injury or hurting any of your possessions. And notice we don't say ensuring these things. We say creating asymmetry to control access, to ensure availability, to prevent harm. This is important because it recognizes that nothing is 100% secure. Someone can pick a lock, break a chain. Whatever security measures you put in place, they don't guarantee security. They create asymmetry. They make it too costly for an attacker to subvert one of these three things. And that's really our goal. So AI can help us advance security of many of our systems. And AI Sweden's goal is to help adoption of AI. So we already have a couple projects where we're using AI to help security. So for example, here's our honeypot projects. If you're not familiar with a honeypot, it's a decoy computer that you deploy usually on a network. And its goal is to attract attackers to attacking it. And this has two major gains. The first is it can use resources of the attacker because they're interacting with a fake system. And usually it's walled off from your real network system, so it can't, the resources are being used on something that can't hurt you. The second thing is it allows you to directly monitor what attackers are doing, so you can learn their attacks and update your defenses proactively. This also gives a quick example of how a lot of our projects go. So you can see we have multiple different, really diverse partners that came together and are contributing so we can work together on this, and we have funding from Vinnova to do so. Here's another example project we have. We use control theory. This is an area of math and engineering where we build math models of systems, and we can model some inputs that we have control of, for example, your gas pedal, and some inputs you don't, for example, friction on the road or wind. And we also have outputs to the system. So these are things sometimes you get to see, like your speedometer tells you a good idea of your speed, and some things you don't. So for example, you may not know how much fuel is going into each piston in the engine of your car. The idea of control theory is to do some math. So you take the outputs you see, you do some math, and in real time it tells you how to change those inputs so the whole system remains stable. The idea of robust control theory is taking into account the fact that our model is not perfect and our sensors have a little bit of error. So we think we're at one place, for example, a little white dot in the center of that yellow disk, but actually we're someplace close. We're not exactly there. And you can mathematically prove that as long as you're within some region of where you think you are, so you're within that yellow disk, then everything's stable and everything's fine. And what we're doing in this project is taking the same math and flipping it on our head to do vulnerability analysis. So we add some attacker assumptions. So what things about your system could a potential attacker see? So for example, in a river system, they may not be able to see your river gauges, but they could just go install their own river gauge somewhere in the river and have a pretty good idea of what you're saying. There may be certain assumptions you make, like they maybe could hack into this computer, or they could physically change some actuator, something like that. So once we have this attacker model, we can use the same mathematics, and we can actually now mathematically solve for the minimal perturbation that the attacker could make, given their limited view of the system and their limited controls. so that the attacker provably destabilizes the system. And so we've recently run a case study. The system we modeled was a social network, so all the entities were people or news sources, and they dynamically push and pull on each other's opinions over time. And if you simulate this system, you can see everyone's opinion. This is the middle plot. It changes over time based on how basically their friends and their news sources push and pull on their opinions. And then we use the attacker model, and we allowed them to affect exactly how one person, only one person, affects one other person. And by affecting that in a very clever way, we're able to not just radicalize one person, but we could radicalize everyone in the network. So we'd like to take this technology and find systems that are worth modeling and do this vulnerability analysis so we know what we should watch out for, how we should advance our security of those systems. So both of those projects were examples of how we can use AI to help security. But another thing we're aware of is that AI has its own security issues. So when we say the term AI security, we mean flaws or vulnerabilities that are unique to AI itself. And the way I always remember this is a quote from Paul Virillo: "The invention of the ship was also the invention of the shipwreck." Our goal at AI Sweden is to accelerate the adoption of AI. And so if we're going to do that, we need to be aware of the vulnerabilities, the problems that our partners are adopting when they adopt AI. Fortunately, there's been over 20 years of research looking at problems that are inherent to AI. And on this slide, I've given you a panorama of the high level, the big taxonomy of the types of vulnerabilities with AI. And so just quickly looking at these, if you have bad data going into your AI system, you're going to get garbage out, right? Garbage in, garbage out. Backdooring the model is when an attacker knows there's some correlations that your AI might have picked up on, and they use that to control their model very tactically. Model stealing is about intellectual property. If someone can see inputs and outputs from a model, they might be able to build their own version of it. It's something we should be aware of. Input and prompt manipulation is when an attacker cleverly changes the inputs to get the AI model to screw up. For example, to an LLM to break its safety boundaries and tell you things it shouldn't. And the last one is training data extraction. If you have private data and you want to use AI on it, for example, in a healthcare setting, the AI model can actually memorize parts of its training data. And so you may be breaking GDPR concerns, or you may be doing something that you consider unethical because you'd like to protect the privacy of those represented in your. And so armed with the knowledge that AI has its own unique vulnerabilities, we're in an interesting place if we're trying to adopt AI, because we really need to be able to reason about the utility, the goodness, the efficiency, the quality, the lives we'll save from using AI. And I actually have a real world news example here of the death rate decreasing by 13% from AI adoption in a hospital in Montreal. We need to balance that with the security risks. If they're going to adopt AI into a hospital, they probably trained it on healthcare data that's extremely private. And so projects that we seek in AI security are about understanding these problems, mitigating them, and being able to reason about the security utility trade-offs so we can use AI responsibly. And so now I'm going to hand off the stage to Fazella, who's going to tell you about two of our projects that deal exactly with this in the realm of privacy.
So thanks to Bobby, and he was supposed to be part of one of the workshops this afternoon. However, Josie Marie Griffiths is still in that workshop, and with the help of Tommy Schönberg from AI Sweden. So it's all set anyways for that workshop, and we look forward to the input that will be brought throughout that workshop. But of course, Bobby sends his regards and is sorry to miss out on this opportunity. As he mentioned in the recording, our next speaker is Fasila Hosseini, a machine learning engineer, and you will talk about how secure are your AI models, evaluating privacy risks. Please.
Hello, I am Fazela, and I'm going to talk about how secure AI models are and evaluating privacy risk in them. But let's start with establishing what kind of risk we are talking about. Imagine that you are working with your colleagues and you're trying to train a model on some kind of a data set that it is private to your company, and you don't want to disclose this data. But you're training a model, and after that, you want to like release this model and put it out. You might just put it on the web, and then your users can like interact with your model and try to query and get the response. The key question that we're trying to answer is that what kind of information about your private data set your model can leak by just simply interacting with the user. To be a bit more concrete, I will bring an example. Let's say that this task is some kind of a face recognition task. So you are training a face recognition model. And you're training it in like your private data set that you gather somehow and you don't want to share it. After you're done with training, you release your model. And there are like a bunch of attacks out there trying to interact with your model to somehow get some kind of information from your training data set. One of these attacks that I'm going to show now, it was proposed 2 years ago, and it tries to reconstruct some images from your private data set. And this is like the result of the reconstructed images. And if you look at the images in the private data set, you can see that this attack is pretty successful to reconstruct the original images. It's like you can identify those people in the private data set. And if you just take a moment and think about this attack and think about the different real scenarios that it can happen in real world, you can see that it's a huge privacy breach. Like, let's think about it as like you are working in you have a company that it's offering a smart home security system, and you're unlocking a lock with some like a face recognition task. And then you want to, and you have trained this face recognition model on your client faces, and you want to share or like sell this model to some other company. So this kind of attacks basically means that by releasing your trained model, you're actually potentially you're releasing faces of your clients, which is like huge privacy breach here. So there are many kinds of attacks. This is one of the attacks that try to reconstruct the data point, which falls in the category of the model inversion attacks. There are another type that is membership inference attack, and it's like given a trained model and a data point, you want to see if this data point was part of a training set of this model or not. And these two attacks can perform by just simply query access to the trained model. So they don't need that much of information to perform. There are also like some other type of attack that they need more information. For example, gradient inversion attacks that they need to have access to the gradient of the model during training. And these are also some attacks that are more studied in federated learning setting. But knowing like different types of attack, that they are very potent, they are feasible, lead us to this question that, so what should we do? Like, we cannot stop using AI, we cannot stop sharing, we cannot stop collaborating. So what should we do here? There are different attempts to give us some guidelines or some instruction to somehow handle this situation. And one of the most concrete one is the opinion that was released in December 2024 by European Data Protection Board. And they basically propose two mitigation approaches. The first one is that when you have trained a model, then you should stress test this model to come up with like an empirically evaluation of what kind of leakage we can have in that trained model. The other strategy is actually using privacy-enhancing technology when you want to train your model. And interestingly, in AI Lab, we have projects for each of these 2 bullet points. For the first one, we have LeakPro, which is stress testing AI models in terms of data leakage. It is an open source tool that we are developing here in AI Sweden together with our partners. And everyone can access that and can work with that. And the goal of this tool is to help a developer to somehow navigate this dilemma of the utility versus privacy. So it tries to help a developer to maximize the utility while operating in the defined risk appetite of the company. The type of questions that we are answering in this project, LeakPro, is that given a target model, if I can reconstruct a data point or not, or given a target model and some kind of a data point, can I say that if this data point was a part of a training set or not? Or if I have some part of a data point that is not very sensitive, can I somehow regenerate or reconstruct the sensitive part of a data point? So these are these kind of questions that we are answering in the LeakPro. And while LeakPro is mainly focused on the trained model, we have a complementary project in the AI Lab that is focused on the first part of this pipeline, like how we train a model, in a way that this trained model actually, this training a model to protect the data. So the first part of this pipeline will cover with this project, and the second part of this pipeline, which is like what happened after you have trained the model, is covered by LeakPro. And if you are interested in any of these projects, you're more than welcome to discuss with me and my colleagues in the poster session about them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fasiele, and also great to hear about these different projects that are ongoing. And now we'll look at it from a different perspective. We're now going to look at the data. And our next speaker is Daniela Petrelli, who is a senior data manager. And she will let us know about pushing the data boundary, what Europe must face to stay competitive. Daniela, please welcome up on stage.
Thank you very much, Ebba. Hello, everybody. My name is Daniela. I'm a data manager, and I'm here to talk about something that sometimes stays invisible until it breaks, which is data. So I have 10 minutes to tell you how to fix it. And everything you're gonna hear comes from first-hand experience in managing data for national initiatives, but also European projects. So let's start with the ideal scenario, right? Imagine that you're building an AI model, a real AI model, and one that understands your language, your laws, your institutions. And you have the team, you have the vision, you have the compute. And everything is working, data flows in, data is representative, and it's clearly licensed, is documented, and you can build, test, improve, deploy, and the progress is happening. So this is the ideal scenario that we all would like to operate within, and we know that this is actually not the case, and the reason for that right now is data. So let's zoom out a little bit, and I want to say that in the Swedish Färdplan, our national AI strategy, data isn't exactly front and center. It is mentioned. It was mentioned by Martin in early morning, but it is not mentioned in the way that it reflects how crucial this component is for people who are actually working with AI development, and this goes from researcher to startups to industry. So data is not just the fuel, it's structure. It's not just an input, it's the foundation. And without it, nothing moves. Having the right data available is key, actually, to securing Nordic competitiveness. And yet today, access to public data is fragmented, their use is unclear, licensing is low, and national rules vary too much to scale anything meaningful. Actually, this was also mentioned by Martin in the beginning. And I want to say that this is not a tech problem, this is a governance gap. So, everybody talks about trustworthy AI. And we want and we must build systems that are respecting fundamental rights and that respect product safety. But we are navigating a fragmented legal landscape, legacy infrastructure and policies that have not caught up with the way AI is actually built right now. So, and in all this scenario, where is the data? The data is there, it's almost usable, almost legal, almost shareable. And again, what in the past looked like a technical problem that we needed to solve, or a challenge in the technical respect, very quickly becomes a legal, institutional, and strategic challenge, actually. So let's take, for instance, the Schibsted OpenAI agreement. I will give you 1 second to look at this. This happened very recently. It's less than 2 months ago. And it shows how far ahead others are in negotiating and reusing what could potentially be a shared infrastructure. So the reality right now is that it is easier today for a US company to sign a deal with a Swedish publisher than for a public research team to reuse the same content. And this is a bit of an asymmetry. So we are building the next generation of models, but in Europe right now we are doing it with one hand tied behind our back. And but so let's see what's stopping us really from leveraging data. First of all, we have the lack of strategic data access in absence of clear data agreements. The Nordic research groups struggle, as I mentioned, to use the same data under uncertain legal conditions. We have data governance complexity. European laws are necessary, but often they create roadblocks. Let's just try to imagine the complexity of understanding and navigating how to share web scraped or publicly available data. Thirdly, I would like to mention synthetic data, the rise of synthetic data. This is not necessarily a blocker, right? There is nothing particularly wrong with it. It can be leveraged in many amazing ways. At the same time, this cannot constitute really the foundation of what we are building. And this is happening because also in my field because of the lack of easy access to real data. But we want to build robust systems. And that maybe synthetic data cannot be the only meaningful way to the future. But why should we be concerned? Why should you be concerned? This is not just about large language models. This is not even just about compliance, by the way. So this is about remaining competitive. And Mario Draghi said it very plainly in his 2024 report to the European Commission. This is not a future problem, this is a present one. Europe is falling behind, not because of lack of talent and ideas, we saw it before, but because of ambiguity and friction. And without strong AI development, EU companies risk being outpaced by non-EU players across all key sectors. But what is the future? So while we don't need more regulation, while we need clarity to the current one, infrastructure, investment in shared tools that can enable action, what we have learned is that we should embed governance into the process from the start. Making data usable, not only available, and what does it mean in practice today is, what are we, for instance, doing right now at AI Sweden? What is our approach? It is that we track provenance, we document trade-offs, we work across technical, legal, public sector domains. And this is not a solo effort, though. And in Europe, and of course in Sweden, as we heard also from Svea earlier, we have talent, we have competence, and we're gonna put it to good use. This slide shows the project portfolio of the natural language understanding team here at AI Sweden. This is some of these are leveraging collaboration with Europe. Some of these projects are building LLMs from scratch with the hope of releasing everything open source with the aim and strong goal and motivation. I recommend you to keep an eye on these projects because some of them have the potential to show what is possible when you treat data governance not as a overhead but as a strategy. And these are also concrete steps towards building an ecosystem that works in Europe. So I want to add also another good note. The Nordic advantage, this region has an advantage because it already values trust, security, transparency. These are elements that are key to the responsible development of AI. And this gives us a natural edge. What we need to understand is that we can lead in showing what competitive, responsible data handling looks like. We don't need to copy someone else's AI strategy. What we can't do is leading through policies alone, because we need a working infrastructure for that. We need to treat data as infrastructure, actually. And it's time to ask harder questions and make a choice. If we want to future-proof Swedish AI, data cannot be a footnote. Governments and organizations should aim for simplified, interpretable rules. We heard this also in the beginning, and align the legal frameworks. We need to raise awareness in the importance of sharing data, making data available, donating data, and this should be done in a responsible, secure, safe way, but in a way that supports the Swedish and the European AI development. Nordic AI will not be built without it. If we don't act now, we risk becoming the users of other people's models and instead of shaping our own future. So the choice that I'm talking about here is either pushing the data boundary or let someone else define it for us. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Danila, and I think we've all heard about some of the challenges that Europe is facing now, and I think you put really this up to the point in a very good way. So it will be interesting to hear about the feedback from the workshop that Danila will be part of in the afternoon here. And with that, we'll move on actually to our last speaker, last but not least. If I can invite Mauricio Munoz, project lead and senior research engineer on stage to talk about Helix model in action, next generation infrastructure for foundation models.
Thank you very much, Eva.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. So hi everyone, my name is Mauricio, and today I'd like to talk to you about our project here, next generation infrastructure for foundation models. I have two things that I want you to take away from the next couple of minutes. The first one being, of course, the what, as in what are we doing in this project. The second is how we're working to get there, because this is, I think, a very good example of what Mats brought up earlier today in terms of the collaboration model that is required in order to basically accomplish a lot of cool things, including what I'll present next. And I want to start the discussion around foundation models. Why? Because, well, I think they're the most fundamental paradigm in machine learning that we've had in the past decade. And this is important because it informs the directions and the way in which we work and what we try to accomplish. So in case you haven't heard about this term, which would surprise me a bit, but it's basically training models that are trained on massive data sets, so internet scale data sets. This used to be defined as more than 1 order of magnitude larger than ImageNet, but I think by today's standards we're quite surpassed this. These are models that have emergent properties that are won through training for broad representations of data, not just for very specific tasks. And the point that I want to sort of really focus on today is this efficiency one, right? So models that have amazing zero-shot performance, so in situations that they've never seen before in training, and that can be easily adapted to downstream specific tasks. Everybody has a favorite example, I guess, from their models, and I think LLMs are very much in the spotlight as an example of this, but I want to take this a step further. I want to show you an example of a company based in the States called Figure, and what they're doing in relation to so-called VLAs, so vision language models. These are models that are trained on this multimodality, actually 3 modalities, trying to combine the vision aspect with the language aspect and the action aspect, so actually doing something about that in the real world. And what you see here, these two robots here collaborating on a task, I mean, this is really not impressive in the sense that if you train for this specific scenario, you can get performance that looks like this. I mean, this is really not something that just based on what you're seeing there alone is remarkable. What's remarkable is if I tell you that these robots have not been in this particular situation before and have basically been prompted with do what you think is best and put these items where you think these items go. And it's basically not just what they're able to do in terms of the dexterity, but the fact that they're working together without really being prompted for it. It's quite an amazing thing that we can do now with these foundation models. So it's very clear that foundation models are part of the future of AI. I think that's quite clear. Let's see what the godfathers say in terms of where everything else is sort of headed. And we at AI Sweden, we had the opportunity to have a 90-minute session with Professor Geoffrey Hinton in December of 2024 in Stockholm. And this was a really fascinating conversation about precisely this topic. And one of the things that I personally picked up from this session was the future of AI is decentralized, in the sense that if you're trying to teach something to another human, this is a very costly distillation process, right? Whereas models can simply be copy-pasted and can learn in a decentralized way. This is a massive difference. From the other perspective, we have Jan LeCun, for example, from Meta, saying that when prompted with this question of what should entrepreneurs nowadays really do in the current scope and the current landscape of AI, he basically says, okay, well, take an open source model and fine-tune it for your own purposes. This is very clear, but actually, how easy is that to do actually? If you're sitting in your company and you have one of these open source models and you want to fine-tune it, well, how easy is that to do? I mean, you actually run the risk of actually ruining the model, I would say, if you don't know what you're doing. And the other component to this landscape that is building in front of us is, of course, offerings for the hardware and compute. So here is an example. Aleph Alpha, a company or a startup from Germany, is using AMD, for example, to test out their tokenizer-free LLMs. We have Intel coming in, of course, with Gaudi 3s and really showing incredible performance, matching and surpassing NVIDIA's H100 and H200s GPUs. We have Amazon AWS basically really betting on their Trainium chips now. And in a real sort of like surprising turn of events now, it turns out that actually the cheapest way that you could possibly or potentially get a lot of these models to run is basically just buy a lot of these. Mac Studios with their unified memory that basically allows you to do precisely this, run very massive models on them. So, and of course, don't underestimate what NVIDIA is doing in the background as they brought on in their, showcased in their GTC conference just a couple of weeks ago, GTX Sparks, so basically really bringing this to, I guess, the consumer, the researcher, this unified memory for basically running massive models. So that's an ingredient that's coming into this landscape. So where does that put us? So that builds an amazing opportunity to do something in this space. And this is about essentially bringing all of the players together that have a say or that want to have a say in this ecosystem. And this is the Helix model that Mats showed in the morning session, where we basically bring use case partners. In this particular project, we're working with Zenseact and AstraZeneca. We are, of course, getting funding from government agencies, from Innova. We are heavily using our infrastructure partners, Intel, Aixia, Proact, and NetApp for compute and other infrastructure storage needs that we have here. And of course, AI Sweden providing the platform and the thought leadership to really get these projects across. What are we doing specifically here? So we are looking at decentralized fine-tuning of LLMs. As said, we have 2 use case partners that are on board. We have Zenseact and AstraZeneca, and actually this shows how, even though these are completely separate companies with very different use cases, at the fundamental level, they're working on very similar things. So this is about, for example, on the Zenseact side, taking all of the requirements that are part of the engineering process for example, a vehicle or a feature on the vehicle, and putting that through an LLM such that they can find conflicts, they can simplify the requirements, they can grade those requirements, they can reason through the requirements in a sort of simulation mode and validate them. On the AstraZeneca side, they want to develop user chatbots that are specialized on the pamphlet data that is freely available and provided, for example, by the EMA. And basically to be able to provide a user with all the things that you need to know about essentially your medications. So the motivating questions that we have for this project are, as said, quite practical and applicable to these use cases, but as you'll see, these are quite generic things that I'm very sure not only these 2 companies that are involved have and need to answer in order for projects of this scope to basically get adopted into their industries. So, for example, figuring out what are the design parameters of this distributed training architecture. So we want to train models not only in a distributed way, but let's say you have a collaboration going on between 2 different entities, maybe even within the same company, that don't rely on the same compute. So you have a stack of NVIDIA cards on one hand, you have a stack of Intel chips on the other, or NVIDIA chips. Now the question is, given these sort of like very real circumstances that we find in industry, how can you collaborate? How can you sort of get across this challenge of not being able to collaborate just because you have different compute than everyone else? Some of the other things that we're taking a look at is how to fine-tune, for example, an instruct LLM such that you don't break out of this chat mode. So basically being able to keep the conversational abilities but still infuse the model with some of the background information that you need, right? This is definitely not trivial to be able to do this. How does the performance compare to centralized fine-tuning? What are the implications for the compute and data efficiency side? Hallucinations are a big problem. I think everybody knows this, but what we don't know is what an architecture of this type that I'm presenting here, what sort of implications does that have for the hallucination effect? Is there any way that we can somehow mitigate this just through the fact that we're using a separate or different architecture that's non-standard? How do you validate the result? I mean, these are all very much open questions. Do you basically take the open benchmarks? Do you have to have a different validation concept? What does that actually look like as a function of this architecture that we're presenting here? And I want to dive in the remaining time that I have on one last focus area that we have for this project, which is, as I said, we're trying to look at fine-tuning, but if you are a user of LLMs, you will know that actually that's probably not the first thing that you want to try. The cheapest thing that you probably want to try if you're basically trying to get an LLM in use for your own purposes is something called a RAG, a retrieval augmented generation. So basically giving your LLM a ton of your documents, and this LLM doesn't have to be specifically fine-tuned to these documents. It can basically go up and search in the document space, to put it in a very rough form. So this is a very cheap thing to do. There are many tools out there that would allow you to do this. And the question is, well, at what point do you basically have this break-even point between the performance that you can get with a RAG system versus when you actually start changing weights of the model, right? And as said at the beginning, this might not be something that's very favorable, specifically for smaller models. This might break quite easily. But if you basically put this on a graph of, on the x-axis, like you see here, some of the scaling parameters in the scenario, for example, the size of the model, the dataset size, the number of clients that you have in your federated learning setup, and you measure the performance, at some point, the fine-tuning will probably take over if you're doing this right. And to find this really critical area of where this happens, this has a significant impact and of course, value to the partners who want to explore, when am I supposed to do what? I've been hearing all these terms. I don't know what to do. Let's find out. And with that being said, thank you very much. Please come find us. We have a poster at the back in the afternoon session. So yeah, happy to take questions then. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And with that, I also want to say thanks to all of the speakers up on stage today. And thanks to the audience for being able to sit down and listen for such a long program.